This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review. Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought, and to debate, brought to you by the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, which promotes humanistic, democratic, and liberal values in the social discourse in Israel. I'm Dahlia Shenlin, your co-host here in Tel Aviv. Gilad is currently traveling. We'll be talking every week about books and ideas that make our lives more interesting. And today we'll be talking to somebody who made other people's lives better and then wrote a book about it. Holger Michel is here visiting from Berlin, where he's got his own small PR and advertising firm working on politics and public affairs. One day he wanted to do something to help the refugees streaming into Berlin in the summer of 2015. He went over to a shelter to pitch in for a while, and then his life changed. The book he wrote tells what happened. It's about his experiences, but just as much about the people he helped. And about Germany, too. It's called Wir machen das, or roughly translated, We're Doing It, published by Kiepenheuer and Witch in 2016. I'm sorry to say that the book is currently only in German, so I can't claim to have read the whole thing. But I know that the story behind it is really worth telling because I actually wrote about the Berlin refugee shelter in September 2015 for 972 magazine, which is where we met. Holger Michel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's go back to the summer of 2015. Germany was really overwhelmed, as was all of Europe at that time. Were you also overwhelmed by what was happening, and is that why you went to help out?
I think everybody was actually overwhelmed. I mean, you could not read the newspaper or open the TV without seeing it. So it was everywhere. Everybody had the feeling that I have to do something. I should take action in this. But I actually never planned to go there. The idea was actually born in a party that we just decided spontaneously on a Friday night, why don't we do something tomorrow morning? So we just went to the shelter and said, hey, here we are. What do you need? What can we do? And this is actually the way the most people went through. Nobody actually wanted to do something. People just thought, I have to go there and do anything. And yeah, many people then stayed there for a long time. And like me, 2 years now.
And what happened when you got there? What did you see?
Expectations, but I don't know exactly what kind of expectations I had. I mean, everyone knew the pictures from Greece, from Turkey, from refugees walking the way from Southeast Europe towards the northern countries. And next to my office, there was a so-called Lampedusa camp. It was like a tent city in the middle of Berlin. And I passed by every day, and I think it looked very sad and hopeless.
Just an open-air tent city.
Yes. And when I arrived to the shelter where I still work or volunteer every day, there were so many people. There were no sadness. There was really a positive vibration and, a feeling of hope. So you had these volunteers. They were so active. Nobody just stood there. Everybody did something. People came, brought donations. Neighbors opened the doors, brought food and clothes. Even the refugees. I think there was something positive feeling. They arrived to a place and they realized, okay, here are people which are willing to help me.
So it was a positive feeling of relief?
Yes, it was very positive. And I think this is also the reason why so many of us just stayed. You never had the feeling, I want to go. You always had the feeling, it's so nice here. And there's so much hope and positive energy around you. And nobody says, oh no, this is impossible. Everybody said, we just have to do something. And that was very influential, actually.
Yeah. It's not normally what you hear about the refugees. Everybody just thinks about them as these poor, sad, miserable, suffering people. So that took you by surprise, and that's what made you stay. And how long did you stay?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they were suffering. I mean, they lost everything they had. Some of them just arrived with the jeans and the T-shirt they had on their body, nothing else. But yeah, still there was this, okay, now you're here, and now we start something new. Now we start giving you a home, although a refugee shelter can never be a home because you cannot close your door. But now we start something new, and these arriving, this is something what makes you very happy and let you believe that if we made this little step, we can go further steps.
So when you arrived at the former municipality building in the municipality of Wilmersdorf, and it was just a big old bureaucratic office building, what was there to help these refugees, and how many of them were in this one building?
Well, there was kind of crazy. It's a former city hall built by the Nazis for the white German Aryans, and suddenly you had there hundreds of people from all over the world to help people. So it was actually, this is the crazy part of history, that we took this shelter to do something good was actually built for something bad. Yeah, I just went there and said, here I am, what can I do? And they said, can you help us sorting donations? I said, of course. And the next day, somebody said, we need somebody in the kitchen. And a few hours later, somebody said, we need a translator. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't speak Arabic. Okay, then find us a translator. So there were always something to do.
So what did you do? You had to find a translator.
I was just walking around and I say, hey, do you speak Arabic? You look like. And then he said, no, I speak Farsi. And I said, okay, but do you know anybody who speaks Arabic? There was also that you met so many people in such a short time. And then we had especially refugees from Syria who spoke very good English. So we said, okay, you don't speak German, but English, that's also fine. I need you to go to the hospital. There's a problem with the woman. Go there and translate. This was also that we started very fast involving the refugees, because we didn't want them to be only the victims. We wanted to have them as active people. After a few days or weeks, of course it depends always on the situation of the individual, we said, what would you like to do and what are you able to do? And so we just took them in our group, and we never had these you and we, but it was one big we. And I think today these we, this is why I also used the word wir for the book. These we created something very new all over Germany, actually. We are, it's a pretty rich and fed up country, and we think that our problems are so big, and in fact they're not. And suddenly millions of people just took action. More than 8 million people volunteered. This is 10% of the entire population, plus all the people who just donated money or clothes or beds or food. And I think these we changed the country in the last 2 years.
Tell me more about that we. What was the reaction when you started putting out the call for help with this shelter? What kinds of things did people say, do, or donate?
It's very different. So also, if you talk to friends or even your family, actually, every volunteer can tell you a negative story, that suddenly the neighbor said, I don't like you that you go there. I don't like the idea that you support the terrorists, because of every refugee is, of course, a terrorist.
And people said that to you?
Yeah. Or they said, I like the fact that you do it, but I don't want to do it. I think it's great, and now I go to the gym. There was also these reactions. And of course, people said, why don't you help homeless people? Why don't you help children, but refugees? And of course, some of my Jewish friends were scared that, what kind of people are coming to the country? And so there was always a part of our daily work that we also understood our work as integration to both sides, to explain both sides, what is the other side about. But we also had very nice reactions. So one day an older lady came and said, listen, I'm on a diet, I want to donate a frozen chicken. So we can't take a frozen chicken because we're not allowed to cook and we cannot take any raw meat. She really insisted to donate these raw chicken. And another day,
Do we dare ask you what happened to the chicken?
Nobody knows. That's the funny thing. Nobody knows where the chicken is today.
What other kinds of stuff did people donate?
They mainly clothes, but also beds, pillows, candles, soap, shampoo,
and time,
food.
Right? Some people volunteered.
Of course. In our shelter, we opened in August 2015. We're still there. In the last 2 years, almost 6,000 people volunteered just in our shelter. And the core team is still 250 people who are actually there every second or third day. We just counted the hours in the first year because we had an online system where you had to register to go in. In the first 12 months, we counted more than 100,000 unpaid hours. And this was just one shelter from thousands in the entire country. So I think this is one of the most amazing experiences, that people were willing to do something without a visible benefit. But in fact, we all had our benefits. I learned so much about me, about my country, and about how much more we can do than we actually thought we could.
What do you think you learned about yourself?
Well, first of all, I realized that my problems are very small problems. What are the big problems? My big problem is I couldn't get the new iPhone. Or my problem is that I couldn't get a seat in a good restaurant. Something like this, or I have some problems with my landlord. But I never lost my home, I never lost my family, I never saw my daughter dying in the sea. And I still have a home. I can go home in the evening, I close the door, I sit on my couch, watch TV. This is something that people didn't have when they came here. Yeah, that was very helpful to reflect on our own lives. Plus that we realized that every day we thought, okay, the next step is impossible. But we know that doing nothing is not an option. So we had to do. And we actually always found solutions. And this is so great if you have every day a little positive step. I mean, one of the most amazing things, 2 years ago, a man from Syria came. His wife was still in Syria, and he thought actually that he could take his wife to Germany. But suddenly the German laws changed. So he was not allowed to bring his wife. He kept fighting, and we went to lawyers and to the court. And now he's working for me. Now he owns his own salary. And just yesterday, his wife were allowed to come to Germany after 2 years. And these things give you so much power. And this is... Now
You're so personally invested in it.
Yes, and now you think, okay, everything we did in the last 2 years, that was worth it. That they are together again. I actually think this is what most of us learned, that we can do so much if we just try and if we open to accept new things. I mean, we have our laws, and I would never be willing to change of any of these laws. But also we realized that I would say 99% of the people who came to the country are very willing to accept our laws. I mean, we have this picture of the wild Arabic man, but it's also a question, what do you offer them? So in our shelter, we had from the first days, we had Jewish volunteers, we had gay volunteers. Men from Iran or from Iraq or from Syria, they never met homosexuals. They never met Jewish people. They grew up with the propaganda of Jews are bad. And suddenly there was a real Jew. And they realized, okay, I learned that you are bad, but you're here to help me. And this is where we said, okay, now that was the first step. The next step is that we did a project together with the synagogue. We said, we just want to bring these people together. And when we had the Pride in Berlin, we just took some of our volunteers, our refugees, to the Pride to show, okay, it's a crazy party and maybe you don't like it, but this is a part of our society. And if you want to live here, this is a thing you have to accept.
How did you propose that to them? I mean, you're all invited to a party. Did you explain it?
No, we just put some big posters in the entire shelter with the rainbow flags, explained in a few sentences what is the Pride, why do we have the Pride, what are the rights of LGBTIs. And we said, and if you want to see it, the Pride is there, come with us. And if you have any questions, ask. They had so many questions.
But how many people said they wanted to come?
We didn't go there together, but I knew that some went there, I saw some, and some of them were a bit confused. Other guys, especially some of the younger women, said, that was really fun, I liked it, I want to go there next year again. And of course, we also had people who said, I don't like this, but okay, if I live here, I have to accept this. And this is actually enough for me. They not need to love everything in our society, but as long as they accept and tolerate it, I'm actually fine with it.
And maybe because you mentioned the question about how the perceptions of Jews were changed, but then you also made the point that Jewish volunteers from Germany were coming to help out in this shelter. What were some of the mutual interactions? Were the Jewish people surprised when they came to see them as well?
Yeah, both sides, actually. Because, of course, as I said in the beginning, the Jewish community was also, maybe not scared, but afraid of who's coming there. We all know how the situation between Iran and Syria and Israel is. So, of course, we were thinking about what kind of guys are coming to our country. But what we learned is that anti-Semitism works because people don't know anything. This is, if you see, it's worldwide the same. In regions where you have the less foreigners, xenophobia is the biggest. Where you have the less homosexuals, protests against homosexual laws are the biggest. And this knowledge we use and said, okay, to avoid any problems, we have to bring them together. And that was very nice. Last year, I started the first Syrian Jewish project in Berlin with refugees and Jews who lived there for the last decades, or Israelis who just moved to Berlin the last years.
What happens in this project? What do they do?
Well, it actually always starts either with football always cooking.
In the end, it's always food and sports.
Exactly. I mean, this is
that
what
bring
works.
people together.
This is what works the best. And suddenly they realize, oh, the Syrian food is so similar to the Israeli food. It's actually the same. You just have some other herbs, way to present it. But in the end, we are so similar. And suddenly they realize, okay, we have many things in common. And from that, you say, okay, I'm as a Jewish volunteer, I'm willing to help you with your papers. And then from step to step, you just bring people together. And there's one, I just hired another young woman from Syria, and she's very religious.
And she's also somebody who was living in the shelter?
Yeah. So I hired two former residents from our shelter. And she's very religious, and of course she's wearing a headscarf, and she's doing Ramadan. And a few weeks ago she said, I hope that the war is over soon because I really miss my home. I want to go back. But until I'm here, I will enjoy my time here. But the problem is when I go back, I can't tell people what kind of life I had here. And I said, why not? She said, I'm a very religious woman. Here I go together with female friends to bars and clubs. I go dancing. I go to my work with a bicycle and I have 3 female friends. One is divorced, one is lesbian, and one is Jewish. Nobody will ever believe me, this story, when I go back to Syria.
They won't believe or they won't accept? What did she...
Well, she said believe, because she said, in my hometown, there are no divorced women, there are no lesbians, and there are no Jewish people. And if I tell them that my friends here are Jewish, homosexual, and divorced, they won't believe me. I actually liked that very much because this is what I actually want to have. She has her own tradition, her own culture, but she takes part of our tradition, our culture, and our way of living. And this is, I think, how integration should work.
So what you're saying, in a way, is it wasn't only about creating a we in terms of the volunteers and the shelter, but also a bit more of a we in terms of a global interactive family of people who know each other better.
Yeah, I think the we started really within the volunteers because I never understood actually the concept of nation pride. I was never proud to be German. I mean, I'm totally fine to live there, I like that country, but I just don't now understand the concept of being proud of my country. But for the very first time, and maybe I was proud, because I realized that so many people just stood up and said, okay, we have a really big problem. We cannot wait for the government to do anything. We see people sleeping in parks. We see children with no food. All these people suffering in front of my door, I will just go out and help them. And that made me actually really proud. And that was maybe the first we as society, we as volunteering society. And then with step by step, my family, I think they liked what I did, but they never took any action. Then I said, I want you to join me. You have to do something. And now my father hired people from Afghanistan and Syria. So suddenly I made him becoming a volunteer. And this is very nice. And from there, we had the next we, that the we became bigger. The we became, our Syrian friends, our Afghani friends, our friends from, we have in our shelter people from 30 countries now.
What kinds of countries other than Syria?
Yemen, Somalia, many former Russian countries. But that group of people just came actually last year. And then Azerbaijan, and some people from Saudi Arabia, some people from Kuwait. So they're actually mainly from that region. We have also a few people from Vietnam, but mainly from the Middle East.
And now I have to ask, I understand it's not, neither the reality nor your book is all a feel-good story.
No, it's not.
These are complicated issues. What are some of the complicated problems that arose during the 2 years dealing with this population?
Well, different things. One negative thing is our own society. Many people didn't like what we do, so we see that the right-wing party is getting stronger and stronger. But of course, we also have people coming from other countries. I told some positive stories, but of course, we also have people who said, I don't care about that. I get my social money, and I will wait until I can go back. Many people, they lost actually their hope. For example, our shelter, the shelter is actually made for a few weeks. People were told you have to stay here for 3 months, and then you either get another shelter where you are able to cook and close your room. You even get a flat. And almost 50% of the people are still there now for 22 months. We still have 1,000 people in our shelter.
Which is capacity, right?
No, the capacity is 1,200. But still, we have 38 showers. We have 50 toilets for 1,000 people. This was actually probably the first time that I understood how important food is, how important it is that you decide by yourself what you eat, where you eat, and when you eat. And here, a caterer decides. So many people, they just lost their hope.
Because in a way, they lost their dignity not being able to choose.
Yes. And
but even though in the shelter, I remember that you put a lot of emphasis on giving people choice, even on small things. Can you describe some of that?
Yes, of course it's important because it's very nice to go to a hotel and people do everything for you. But after a few days, you want to make your own decisions. So when we have these wardrobe where people get their donated clothes, in some shelters, they decide for you what you're going to wear. This is your shirt, this is your pant. And we opened little boutiques or little shops and we said, come in and choose and try, and you can even change within 2 weeks. We wanted to have a real shop like we have in the country. In the beginning it was open 7 days a week because that was the main needs people had when they came. Now we only open for 2 days a week because clothes is not the most important thing anymore. Now we're talking about jobs, about integration, about helping with papers. We hired many lawyers because especially people from Afghanistan, we have elections in September. So the government wants to demonstrate that they're very strong. They will kick out as many refugees as possible. And they can't go send back any people to Syria. So now they found Afghanistan as a safe country suddenly. And so for the people from Afghanistan, it's a very sad situation. People from Syria are allowed from the first day or the first weeks to go, and not even allowed, they are forced to go to an integration and language course, what is so important. Without language, you can't survive in any country. But the Afghani people, they are not allowed because it's safe. So that means within their asylum process, what takes approximately 16 months, they're not allowed to go to a language course. They really sit and wait. So this is why we offered language courses, to tell the people, first of all, you have to do something, you have to develop. We want you to stay here as long as you can, and for this you need German.
Let's talk a little bit more about the reaction of the German population at this point. You mentioned already some of the difficulty with, right-wing reactions. How would you say the attitudes have changed since September 2015? You said there was this big outpouring in the beginning, but forgetting about politics for a moment, what do you feel from society? Because even then, it was a time of outpouring of support. But even then, I remember people saying, I wonder how long this is going to last in the population. Where do you think things are 2 years later?
I think the situation changed a lot. First, there was this euphoric, okay, we help. Then we had the attacks in France and Belgium. We had these famous nights in Cologne where foreigners touched women. We talked almost 1,000 women.
Harassing them.
Yeah. Of course, all this influenced the media, that influenced the feeling in the society. So I think 2016 was actually a very tough year because it was very aggressive. The right-wing parties, when we had elections in federal states, became stronger and stronger. When I went to TV for talk shows, I got awful emails.
Like what?
We will kill you, we hope you die, we know where you live. That was the normal reactions for interviews. And I think the situation now is a bit better again. Now people, if I have interviews in radio or television, they write me, we don't like you. But they don't write
so
me.
That's considered an improvement.
They don't write me, I want to kill you anymore.
What do you attribute that to if things are a little bit better now in terms of the reaction of the German people?
I don't know exactly. I think people also realize the first month were confusing and nobody knew what's the way. And they more and more realize that many people are willing to integrate and to become a part of our society. But for this, I think we have a very long way to go. So I'm very afraid that the situation will be worse in the next 3 months, actually, till September, till the elections, because you already feel that the parties, and I mean all parties, from left to right, start actually a battle. Who has the better idea to kick out refugees? We only talk about the refugee. I mean, we took 1.2 million people in 1.5 years. So there is not the refugee. First of all, it's people from many countries. They have different backgrounds. We say, we only want the high educated. But in fact, it's funny that people with a lower education are actually getting much easier jobs because their jobs are not based on language. Teachers or professors, for example, their job is based on language. So for them, it's much harder than for somebody who learned how to make shoes.
Right, but you're saying the election times are going to be dangerous in that sense because the parties are competing with each other to see who can be tougher on refugees.
The right wing, I mean, we have these new parties now, 3 or 4 years old, Alternative for Germany. The leader just said in an interview a few weeks ago, I hope that there will be some terror attacks. Because if we have terror attacks, we are getting stronger.
Well, that's a cheerful thought. Many countries share this problem, right? This is a global issue right now. Refugees are all over with all the complexities. And Israel also has had a stream of asylum seekers, people who I can't call refugees because they haven't had a status determination. The government has dealt with them in different ways, but many of them have left or been sort of pressured to leave or have actually been deported. At present, there are about 40,000 of them who have applied for asylum. What would be the important piece of advice that you would give Israelis? Because we've had also this kind of tension. Most of these people are from Africa, from Eritrea, Sudan, Ethiopia. What have you learned from your time that might help Israelis understand and accept the situation of these refugees?
The first thing is actually integrate them. That means don't put them in a shelter or in a city far away. Put them in the middle of your society. If you don't want them to be as victims forever, and if you don't want them to live from your money forever because they're isolated, put them in the middle of your society. That includes, do not only allow them to do an Ivrit language course, but there must be a duty. If they want to live here, doesn't matter if it's a year or 10 years or forever, they must speak the language of the country. Next thing is find out what kind of strength they have. What can they do for the country? I mean, it's always a question, I think, from both sides. Okay, the first thing is, of course, we have to help. But in the next step, I mean, help is a short-time thing. On the next step, what can we do for you and what can you do for us?
And you're saying that not as a matter of making them feel obliged, but making them feel dignified, it sounds to me.
Yeah, both. But I mean, also, my little company, I have a personal benefit because I found people with some specific things they can do. I need it. And this is what you actually have worldwide. People always bring some things they can give you. Skills, exactly. That was the word I was missing. So everybody has some skills. Integrate them, give them opportunities. Make clear these are the rules of our country. If you want to live here, accept these rules. And now let's go the way together.
So now I'll ask you the really complicated last question because we have to end. But what would you try to say to Israeli society in general to try to help Israelis be more accepting and willing to do that? Because that's the problem. One of the problems we're having is that the society is not so happy about it, just like in Germany, or some people in society, I should say. Have you learned anything after the 2 years of confronting this kind of resistance that you think can help?
Yes, because we had the same. I mean, I went to some public debates and people were very aggressive to me and said, you are working with the terrorists, we don't want the guys here, it's the dangerous, the young horny man. And then I said to one woman, okay, I make an offer. Come with me to the shelter for 2 hours, I will guide you around, and then we talk about this again. And she really came, and now she's a volunteer for 1 year because she just realized, this is what I told you in the beginning with the Jewish volunteers. People just need to know the other side. Problems mainly coming from not knowing each other.
That is a very hopeful story to end this conversation on. That's Holger Michel, the author of Wir machen das, which is only in German for the time being, but it translates roughly to We're Doing It. The book documents his year as an accidental organizer of an impromptu shelter for thousands of refugees in Germany. Holger, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
And also a big thanks to Gizem Özdemir, our sound engineer, and to the Van Leer Institute for their generous support. If you like this podcast, there are many more where it came from. Just go to www.tlv1.fm/podcasts and take your pick. Don't forget to visit our new website, telavivreview.org, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. Join us again next week for another edition of the Tel Aviv Review. And until then, goodbye.